Okay, well, thank you so much for your warm welcome, Genevieve. I really appreciate it. And I'm just delighted to be here with you all talking about teens. I'm very fond of teenagers and have been since I was only just past being one myself. I've been working with youth all my life in various capacities. So, teens are very close to my heart, and teens are the specialty of my practice with parents in New Zealand here. So, how do we raise resilient teens in a pandemic? I would like to suggest to you that you can take one of two approaches. Do we toughen them up or do we soften them up? That's the question that frames this entire presentation. I'm going to start with a little bit of context to us in our time of COVID. And here in New Zealand, we've been in lockdown just like you, just coming out of it in the last week or so. Increasingly, we're getting more freedoms. Evidence is showing that youth are not taking the hit physically from coronavirus. However, it's fast becoming clear that young people are feeling the pandemic's social and economic impact more acutely than any other age group. So teens are sacrificing coming of age ceremonies such as prom and graduation. One teen says, "I really wanted my grandmother to see me walk across the stage, and I really wanted to experience prom, but it's definitely gone from like the Breakfast Club to some post-apocalyptic movie." And I think that's a feeling shared by a lot of teens. Teens are balancing schoolwork expectations with care for younger siblings while their parents are tied up trying to balance working from home. They're taking on adult worry over household finances. And alongside that, they're holding concern for their own futures in a world fast spinning into economic crisis. With all of this on their shoulders, coupled with a sense of impending doom, how do we raise resilient teens in a pandemic? Do we toughen them up or do we try to soften them up? Well, I'm going to start by asking the question, what is resilience? Generally considered the ability to recover from trauma and loss, distressing events and circumstances. And those young people who have good long-term outcomes despite having suffered adverse circumstances are considered resilient. My question once again is, does true resilience stem from emotional toughness or emotional softness? The Oxford Dictionary defines resilience like this: the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. Toughness implies to me not showing a lot of emotion, an ability to get on with what needs to be done without making a fuss. And it's a very prevalent understanding of resilience. Should we really be trying to toughen them up? I'm doing an upcoming talk on resilience in New Zealand shortly, and I put a Facebook ad out, and somebody wrote a comment underneath the Facebook ad. It says, "Tell them to just get on with it like our parents did to us." It seemed to work. Most of us are here to still tell the tale. And that's a very Kiwi attitude. We have this sense that we can fight our way through anything. It's called the pioneer spirit, when we came here a few hundred years ago and had to work the land and fight for everything we got. And it's a real sense, just leave them to it. Don't bellyache about how tough it is. Don't indulge your teens' emotions around difficult experiences. Push it to one side and get on with surviving and becoming a functional and productive member of society. However, evidence shows that those teens who had tough it out parenting instead of kind, supportive parenting don't end up as highly productive members of society. They do a lot worse in outcome indicators. So I question the definition of resilience as tough. A tough teen has shut down to their emotions so as not to trouble their parents or peers with it. Culturally, bring back our question. Culturally, we value the tough, the invulnerable, those who seem unaffected by their circumstances. And for those people who wear their hearts on their sleeves, who show fear, sadness, and disappointment, are considered weak, not strong. But resilience research shows that those teens who actually bounce back and recover from adverse circumstances are those who have actually softened their hearts to at least one caring adult. Evidence shows it's not the tough that thrive, even though they may survive. Losing their feelings means losing their capacity to bounce back. It's actually the soft who thrive and find the ability to bounce back. Neufeld defines resilience as the capacity to return to optimal functioning or to thrive under duress. So it's all about the power of the bounce back, with an emphasis on optimal functioning. So what actually is optimal functioning? Well, according to Neufeld, it means somebody who is full of feeling, full of play, and full of rest. If you don't see these three things in your teen, it's not optimal development and it's not true resilience. To find these three things in your teen, you actually first need to soften them up. So how can teens find this type of optimal functioning in the middle of a pandemic? Full of play. How can we be full of play in a time of pandemic? Playfulness is the last thing we feel. Play emerges from rest. Okay, so how do we find rest in a pandemic? Well, teens right now are in the work mode, not the rest mode. They're working to follow all the new rules around social distancing and keeping their hands clean, working to take care of their younger siblings. Some are working in part-time employment to earn for the family, whilst still working to maintain their own grades at home and catch up with the slow back-to-school startup. In the midst of all of this work, anxiety has skyrocketed. Teens are struggling with anxiety from all the troubling news of the world coming in. They have worries over loved ones, worries over their future. One youth work organisation reported last month that the data is showing 93% of teens are struggling with some sort of anxiety. This is compounded by a sense of isolation from friends and from their wider community and can create a sense of hopelessness and desperation. One social worker says, what's really dangerous is there are some kids who, in the pangs of loneliness, just can't imagine a world where they don't feel this way or see the light at the end of the tunnel. Rest? I think not. All of these worries trigger restlessness, poor sleep. What about feelings then? Lockdown teens who hold the daily realities of a worldwide crisis, the anxieties of their family's financial situation, the care of their siblings, their schoolwork, and their own anxieties, should they be expected to hold all of this without feeling their feelings? The Toughen It Up approach encourages teens to push down their worries in order to not let out their feelings, so they can appear tough and look as though they're coping. The Soften Them Up approach says let's find their feelings first. We generally see the expression of a lot of emotion as a sign of weakness. Actually, it's a sign of strength. The expressing of emotion itself is part of the healing process. So if you think finding teens in their play and their rest too difficult right now, I suggest you start by helping them find their feelings first. By feeling their feelings and expressing their feelings allows them to get onto the other side of the distressing feelings and find their rest. And out of rest comes play. Feelings lead to rest, lead to play, lead to optimal functioning. So the focus of the rest of my presentation is on how to help teens find their feelings, because rest comes in the wake of expressed feelings and play comes in the wake of rest. Deborah has given an amazing presentation on play, which you can access at any time. So, how to raise a resilient teen? I have a formula for you, and it starts with soften them up. How do we soften them up? Well, find their feelings. Once they've found their feelings, find their rest and find their play. So let's start with finding feelings. So I just want to reference a meta-analysis here that's been done. A meta-analysis is when researchers take a whole body of literature, a whole number of studies done on one particular subject, in this case, resilience and teens. They pull all the findings together and see if there's any overarching story and overarching findings that is found in all of the other pieces of research. This meta-analysis on teen resilience found that young people under high stress who showed higher levels of emotional distress functioned better compared to those young people who didn't show their emotions. You might say, aren't distressed teens showing that they're in trouble, that they're not healthy? It seems that the findings show that the expressing of their emotions actually enabled them to cope better. Gordon Neufeld says, emotion is meant to take care of us. All emotion is there for a purpose. Emotion moves us from one state to another, but it's not enough to just have emotions. We actually need to feel our emotions to unlock our potential for resilience and recovery. So we need to feel our feelings to move us to a different state. I've got an example for you. I have a friend who's a community support worker, and she works in that capacity as a personal trainer. So she invites clients who are in really difficult situations to release their frustration on a punch bag. She tells me some of them get so mad they hit and hit until they're exhausted and they seem to lose all sense of context. They can smash the bones in their knuckles, and she has to make sure they're wearing a lot of wrapping around their hands because they are unaware of the pain, and at the end of it they collapse, often into tears. The frustration is releasing. You see, it's the expression of emotion that allows a person to move to a different state. Without feeling our emotions, we can get stuck. We can be hurt, tired, sorry, hopeful, but hardened up to that feeling, leaving emotion unable to take care of us. Many teens in at-risk contexts never feel their emotions or even their physical sensations, such as pain or tiredness. There's a lot of teens right now with increased risk of family violence. Many of them won't show any of it on their face. They're highly defended. It leads them to making foolish decisions, such as playing chicken on the road with an oncoming car. Many teens have lost their natural sense of alarm. Gordon Neufeld says, for optimal functioning, we need to feel our vulnerable feelings. We need to feel hurt when wounded, tired when needing rest, sorry when bad things happen, alarmed when facing separation, lonely when we're apart from someone we love, embarrassed when exposed in a negative light. And I tell you, the number of teens in high schools who blush or who show any kind of emotion are very few. It's too dangerous for them to show, it feels like to them. They should feel cautious when something could go wrong, rejected when not invited in, and frustrated when thwarted. You see, emotional health is noisy. Some teenagers can complain a lot. They get hurt, they feel left out, they feel wounded, they feel upset. These are all typical emotions of the adolescent years. The upset is part of the emotions shifting from out of that state. We have not understood the importance of those feelings. I reflect on what's the importance of my feelings. So for myself, I find that I've realized that my fear helps keep myself safe, and it helps keep my kids safe and those I love safe. Fear is a very healthy emotion to feel. My sadness gives me a chance to grieve those things I need to learn to let go of, or to honor those things or ones that I have lost. And my anger gives me the strength to fight against that which hurts me or hurts others. What's the alternative to not feeling our feelings? Well, the alternative, which is a very popular approach taken by many experts today, is to try to stay calm. One parental expert says it's the ABC, always be calm. Calming. There is this idea that we should control ourselves from falling into negative emotions and get to a calmness. There's this focus on self-regulation, breathing, counting to 10, calming ourselves. But this is a focus on control, not letting go, but emotions are meant to move us to a better place. I'm going to suggest that we need to invite all of our teens' emotions, both the positive and the negative. We are meant to be optimistic, loving, caring, cuddly, thankful, and thrilled. But these emotions come on the other side of pessimism, opposition, criticism, disappointment, and irritability. The last thing we want is a perpetually calm and tranquil child. This is the good child, who has squeezed themselves into the shape their parents want them to be, and has cut off all the so-called negative emotions that their parents don't approve of. Neufeld calls this the emotional cookie cutter. It might suit us in the short term to have a good child, but the long-term outlook for a good child can be bleak. Neufeld says this is not a calmness of emotional health. This is the kind of calmness that is about repressed emotion, not about the true healthy calmness that comes in the wake of a storm. We want to get to that calm for free, without having to experience all the misery that comes in between the storm and the calm after the storm. We want to shortcut straight to that calm, and it's not a healthy calm. It's not the kind of a calm that is natural. We need to invite all of our teens' emotions, both the positive and the negative. There's a quote here from a writer I like called Cynthia Bourgeault. She says, "For majesty to grow in us, all must come to the light. Both the dark parts of oneself that need healing and the light parts that need birthing." If our teens are only allowed to express their sunshine and not their rain, they're not whole people. So emotions can help teens to care about the consequences of their actions, to resolve impulsiveness, and to mature emotionally. Emotions help teenagers to find rest and to fuel play. We need to feel our emotions to unlock our potential for resilience and recovery. So, that having been said, and hopefully we're agreed, hopefully I've convinced you, the next question is, what gets in the way of our feelings, or our teens' feelings? Well, sometimes feelings are inhibited for good reason. For example, in the midst of a fire in your house, it's best not to be fussing about the itchy nose that you might feel, or even our distress over our burning possessions. We need to close down our feelings so that we can get on and save lives. And you can see how in a pandemic this is useful too. Police officers, ambulance workers, hospital staff, they all need to shut down their own alarm and get on with the work needed to save people. They can't afford to be in their soft hearts and in their emotions and the work that they're doing. They create this short-term response that's called the defense response. Feelings can be shut down in our system as a defense against vulnerability, and it can be a very useful protection against wounding experiences and a sense of fragility. Dr. Neufeld outlines the types of feelings that are likely to be defended against. Feelings of woundedness, feelings of dependence. Interestingly enough, we don't always think of this one. Leaning on someone else is vulnerable. Feelings of shyness. Have you ever seen a real tough teen who's shy? Probably not. Feelings of embarrassment, including blushing. Feelings of shame that there is something wrong with me. Feelings of futility, sadness, disappointment, grief, sorrow. Feelings of alarm. feelings of caring. Now, when these are defended against, we bewail our teens. Why don't they care? Why don't they seem to care? We need to remember they're in a defense response and they've lost their feelings of caring. And along with that, feelings of responsibility, guilt, remorse, wanting to make things better, that all gets lost in the defense response. Now, defense response has a purpose. Defendedness, however, should be temporary. For example, teens at school. I actually tell my own children at times, don't show your tears if you're upset about something at school. Hold them in till you get home. Don't show how upset you felt about this. Hold on to it till you get home. Come and cry on my shoulder. And when I worked as a substitute teacher, I know that I was very defended. I learned very quickly how to defend myself so that I wasn't constantly overwhelmed by the negativity coming at me. Defense serves a really useful purpose, and we would do well to respect it in the right time and context. I want to share a story of a youth justice worker I worked with once. This is someone who works with teens in trouble with the law. And this woman worked in a centre that had a cafe attached. One day, one of the teens, remember these are teens in trouble with the law, they stormed into the cafe where she was and started ranting and raving, really up in her face, aggressive, verbally, having a go at her. She knew her job and she was good at it. She held her ground, she heard, she reflected, they listened to what he said. She handled the situation well. The teen eventually turned on his tail and stormed out. And at that point, her friend, who was a worker in the cafe, came up to her and said, "Oh, you poor thing, that must have been awful. You did so well." And she just melted. The tears came. All of the emotion that was hidden under her tough exterior dropped away. Unfortunately, the teen turned around and came back. Now he was throwing his aggression at her, and she didn't have anything to protect herself with. She felt completely naked in the face of this assault. And she was so mad with her friend that it was never done intentionally, but the naivety of dropping someone's defenses when they are there for a purpose and they are helping her do her job. We need to let defenses operate and do their job at times. So when might the defense response not be so good? When the defense response gets stuck. So here are some signs of a teen in trouble where their defense response has locked in and it never comes down. They go to school defended, they come home defended, they go out with their peers defended, and the defense stays up even all night long. They no longer talk about what distresses or their hurt feelings. They no longer feel unsafe or alarmed, no longer read rejection or feel its sting. They're no longer given to sadness and disappointment. They no longer feel as needy, empty, lonely, or dependent. And isn't that a wonderful thing? Who wants to feel those feelings? They're painful. They no longer seem visibly affected by loss and lack. Now, the payoff for all of this is that they are much better able to function and perform under duress. No one's going to make me look like a fool. These teens are cool, seasoned, and unaffected. Unfortunately, defensive armor comes with a cost. A permanently defended teen, has a loss of playfulness, a loss of restfulness, and a loss of the vulnerable feelings that could move them to bounce back. A loss of empathy and caring, resulting in more wounding and more wounding interaction. The loss of empathy and caring we so miss as parents. We see our teens and we think, why can't they just care? A defended teen no longer cares about consequences imposed on them by adults, and they can begin to turn aggressively on the hand that feeds them, without concern for the adult. To find their way back to emotional health, we must first soften the heart. How do we soften the heart of a teen? The easiest way to soften the heart of a teen is to find their missing feelings first and foremost. So we're going to go into finding their missing feelings in the second half of the presentation, but I'm actually going to stop now and take time for questions. So I'm going to bring you back up again, Genevieve. Here we go. See me again? Oh, I was going to stay on the other screen, wasn't I? Do you want me to go back?
You're so fast now. Your technology is great for everyone in the background. Adrienne is trying out that new technology. It's allowing her to in the slides and learning with Zoom as I've been madly taking notes, Adrienne. It's been quite quiet in the chat so far, but I will encourage you all as discussing here. We'll take some minutes for questions. So type into the chat. I'm here. Pleased to bring any questions, Adrienne. Oh, there's so many important pieces in here. I was thinking about beginning teens right now and their visions of the breakfast club and all the fun that they were going to have. I have a pseudo niece who is in grade 12 here in Canada, grade 12, graduate from high school. And I just went for a walk with her about all of the adjusting and not what it looked like. I hadn't heard the always be calm. I even imagine all aspiring to being calm. And she said that, she was describing she didn't have a calm iota in herself, right? And I was wondering when, if there's a way when, I'm sure you'll get into it in the second part as well. But struck me the most is that impulse for toughening up when softening is what's necessary. And I think here in Canada as well, you were mentioning there's sort of this push for either a calming down or a toughen up. This softening is quite countercultural. And I know when I work with it, I hit some walls when you try to discuss with people. Have you found that as well? That it takes a little bit of convincing that softening?
Yeah, I mean, people, when I say, I'll give an example. I was asked to go into a high school and speak with one of my clients. Their son was having a lot of trouble at school, and she asked, could you go and speak to his teachers and just tell him what we're doing, explain the approach so that they understand why he's not getting into trouble all the time for all the naughty things he's doing. So I sat the teachers down, the senior staff, and I said, look, this is what a resilient teen is, a soft heart. We're trying to soften the heart. If we can soften the heart, we can get a way in with this child. We can start to make progress. It's not about punishing the wrongdoing, which feels like has to be done. It's about softening the heart, and then there's a genuine desire in him to want to, comply and come on side with the teachers in his life. And they just looked at me shocked. They stepped back in their chairs and they said, I didn't think that's what resilience was at all. I thought it was about being tough enough to not let it get to you. And I was like, you can let it get to you and you can roll around in the pain of it all, and then you're far more likely to come out the other side be better off.
Yes, and it's so interesting for those of us, I think a lot of us here, we see this and we see it in our work, and we see sort of the evidence of this once you start looking at it through this lens. But it can be tough to help others see it in a bit of a different way, right? That sense of resilience equating this toughness. It's one of, I think that's such a important thing to confront in our society, because it really is taken as self-evident. I see Liz wrote into the chat, she wrote that families that she works with that have anxious teens are finding that their teens have become less anxious at home. Parents' rest is happening. And I'd love to hear you speak to that a little bit, because I think there is some different things at play here.
I would love to speak to that. So I've just done a presentation in New Zealand recently on anxiety, and there is a really split response in the families and in the families that I'm working with and the stories I'm hearing out there. So for the typically anxious child, whether it's a younger child or less often, but an anxious teen, that a teen who's showing their signs of anxiety, I feel anxious, I feel worried, I feel vulnerable. So anxiety we typically equate with vulnerability. So the teens who are showing their anxiety and are struggling to be and cope in a school environment, it's like all their Christmases came at once. I get to stay home where I feel safe, and I get the key people in my life who I care about and feel safest enough with. I get to be with them all day long. Now, the problem for these is getting them back to school. And I had so many parents asking me, how do I get them back to school? We've been happy the whole lockdown. Now I've got this hugely distressed child because they knew this is what they needed. And actually, the lockdown was an answer to a lot of their questions. Unfortunately, there is another element to this. So I work with parents of highly defended teens. And when they went into the lockdown, they were in a bad state emotionally. One family I worked with, their son had just started running away from home just before lockdown. His alarm was, my understanding was that his alarm of everything that's going on at the moment was just shooting through the roof. And the higher his alarm got, the more defended he got and the more defended. So when his parents said, why won't you stay at home with us? Why won't you be where you're safest? And he just went into this defense response, which pushed him into absolute reverse understanding of what is safe and what is not. And he went out that door over and over again, stayed away. It's so distressing. So some families are not finding that lockdown was helpful for their troubled teens. It has been really distressing. It has been so hard to keep them under their own roof and within their four walls, trying to comply with the rules. It's been an incredibly stressful time, and that's because of the defense response I just explained. Those teens whose hearts are much softer really found their answer in this time of peace at home.
Yes, and Adrienne, speaking to something in Canada, as some of our provinces are discussing, and here in British Columbia, schools are on a voluntary basis, and it is those questions of, for some, that staying home is an answer, of being people in their space, and it was a bit of a reset and a regroup, and now to venture back out. And so it is interesting to have both sides to that experiences, certainly. And Liz Hathaway also commented in the chat, she was referring back to what I said before. She said it's very common in Canada too that I survived this kind of difficulty. Why can't today's kids just suck it up too? After all, I turned out okay. And I appreciated you really putting forth emotional health, because I think that's the other side of it. I think about the kids that are teens that are able at home to be noisy, and so being home, there's that space for it, and there's that room, and all of the feelings can come out, whereas other places that necessarily. So I do that emotion. It's mixed with our misunderstanding of that emotional health should be and that resilience should be tough. And if we turn those on there.
Absolutely. And I do think that those parents who are saying, why can't they just get on with it? Why are they making such a fuss? That attitude was there before the lockdown. It, to me, is a sign of a parent who has a really hardened heart. Yes, they were told to get on with it, and actually it was wounding for them as a child, and the way they survived was to just toughen up. And I just want to remind those parents of the research that I talked about earlier, where those kids, they survive. They survive all right, and they know how to survive, but they do not thrive. And the indicators in the research show that they don't have the breadth of compassion, the breadth of emotional health that will allow them to make good future choices, have good long-term partners, have good family outcomes, have good health outcomes, and good emotional health outcomes. All of these are really clear indicators of a child who's been allowed to be soft when they were young. And the ones who had to harden up to survive, they do survive, but they don't thrive. And I think those parents probably are a little disconnected from their own soft self, so that they can't get the perspective of what's needed here.
Oh, I really appreciated how you said that. That is an important piece too. I have some other questions but I think just with the time and the flow, maybe we should switch back to the second part and then leave a little bit longer at the end for questions too, because I don't want to get questions ahead of where you're going.
Sure. And can I just say, I really encourage people to type in the chat any thoughts, feedback, as we're going, anything that just springs to mind, because I love that kind of engagement and interaction, and it helps me might clarify for you some points. So do just feel really free to type in the chat for the second
absolutely.
part.
You've got our Canadian Friday and end of the day brains. So those of us in North America may be a little bit slower. I'm noticing my slow reaction time. So
yes, it's mid-morning here in New Zealand, so I'm bright and early on a Saturday morning.
Yes. Well, excited. Second, Adrienne.
Okay, so I'll bring myself back up again then. Here we go.
As well. Okay.
Okay. So we're going to continue talking about feelings here, how to soften the heart and find those feelings. And just a quick revision over the how-to slide, how to raise resilient teens, soften them up, find their feelings, find their rest, and find their play. So we're working on the find their feelings layer right now. Dr. Neufeld identifies 3 key feelings that teens need to feel in order to restore resilience. These are the feelings that move them to bounce back. They need to feel safe from wounding and separation. They need to feel sad when up against that which they cannot change, and this allows them to feel strong and confident in the face of adversity and discomfort. Now, I just would like to have a little aside note here on the idea of bounce back. The bounce back works for those teens who had the emotional health first and then experienced the trauma. Bouncing back to the health that they were in before. If trauma is experienced when those feelings have already been lost, it becomes more difficult for the teen to recover. It's never impossible for the teen to recover. We need to find those feelings. But just to indicate that if you have a teen who was already defended and already shut down and then experiences trauma, that's when it becomes very difficult for them to find their way through until a caring adult comes alongside, helps them to feel safe, feel sad, and feel strong. I'm going to start with feeling safe. How to help a teen feel safe in a pandemic. In a worldwide crisis with at-risk family members and constant fear of the virus whenever you go out in public. What's safe about that? Are we even genuinely safe if we try and reassure them? Well, I'd like to just underscore here that in order to help a teen feel safe, they need a close relationship with a caring adult. We can protect them emotionally even if they're not completely safe in all reality. It's the relationship that gives them the sense of safety. And I feel quite strongly about this. I feel like there's no need to assure our teens that nothing will ever go wrong. We don't need to say, oh, you will never catch COVID, grandma won't die, or that, I as your parent am never going to lose my job. There's a lot of ifs and buts around right now. And false assurances can lead to absolute loss of trust when something does go wrong. You don't need to assure them of that. You simply need to reassure them that no matter what they go through, you will be there beside them, supporting, guiding, giving them a shoulder to cry on and lean on. The relationship keeps your teen feeling safe from wounding and separation. So separation is at the heart of most anxiety, frustration, and pursuit issues. We saw that defended heart before, and I like to show parents this image of how can we get our way in underneath those defenses so that our love and our care can actually get to that alarmed child who's under the surface of all this defense. A close connection with a caring adult can heal daily wounds and upsets, and it keeps their heart soft. It helps a teen avoid becoming stuck in defensive armor. It gives them a sense of safety so that they can take down their defensive armor for a time, even if it's only the time they're in your care. Now, I've studied a lot of resilience research in my time, and I can tell you that very clearly, and this is directly quoted from a huge study with, I think it was 900,000 adolescents, that a sense of closeness and connection with a caring adult is the single most significant factor that protects a young person from risky behaviors and emotional. Now, I'm pretty big on this whole resilience thing, so I'd like to talk about this a little bit more. What is a protective factor? It's a commonly used term in research. Well, there's a whole lot of research on ACEs, they're called, adverse childhood experiences. And this research shows that a child who experiences traumatic childhood experiences has every chance of it affecting their future outcomes. ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, result in poor mental health, poor physical health, the child being less likely to find a life partner or a stable income. They're more prone to substance abuse and other risky behaviors. But resilience research shows that some factors can what's called mitigate against the risk of poor outcomes. What does this mitigate thing mean? Well, here's an example. So you've got two adolescents, both exposed to domestic violence. The researchers trace these kids through into adult life, and they find that one has managed to recover from the experience without any devastating long-term outcomes or effects, while the other follows this expected trajectory of poor health, poor emotional health, poor life choices, poor economic outlook. And so they asked the question, what was the difference between these two teens? Both experienced the same trauma, but one came out okay. Can we pinpoint what it was that made the difference? A huge study after study, I have to say, but one recently has come out that shows that the continuous presence of a trusted adult support person is the single factor that makes a difference. One adolescent had a caring, supportive adult, so that no matter whether they experienced domestic violence or other horrendous things that some teens go through, if there's one adult they can soften their heart to and trust, they get through okay. They find the bounce back. So did you realize how important you are to this equation? A lot of parents come to me and say, he needs to see you. She needs to get help. And I just want to reassure them that you are their answer. You've got it within your own arm's reach. Teens will only show their emotions to those they feel safe with. It's our work as parents to create a safe space to invite them into, one where there's an unconditional sense of welcome. No matter if they feel angry, sad, fearful, bored, reluctant to be in your presence. I think we all know as parents of teens what that feels like, trying to come alongside and they're just rolling their eyes or trying to be on their phone. You let them come to you without judgment. If you can do this well, and if you can start to create a connected space between you, then you become their go-to place for guidance and support. You become the place to bring their dilemmas, crises, upsets, questions. You show them that your shoulders are big enough to take whatever they've got to throw at you. And in this connected space, if they disclose big, scary emotional issues like substance use, bullying, cutting, eating disorders, you might feel completely freaked out and think, I don't know how to handle this. But all you need to say is, we can get through this. I'll make sure of it. If you don't feel strong enough yourself, fake it. Then find your own support. Read, research, find professionals and friends and family around to help you with it. But you take the lead with your teen in finding the solutions for them. They will follow you out of the crisis if you have the lead in the relationship. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Neufeld's construct here of shielding. It is a powerful construct. Our attachment, our connection with the child is what shields them from the external wounding environment beyond. This is how a shield works. We as the adult offer our heart to our teen with care, kindness, a firm lead, dependability. The teen must offer their heart to us in return. And if it feels safe, then they will show us their vulnerable feelings. It's the sharing of those vulnerable feelings that brings the healing and the respite from the wounding. What if the teen won't offer their heart? Well, the shield won't work. It's got to be a two-way thing. It's not enough that we just offer ours. We're going to have to find a return somehow. Sometimes it's not within our control. A shield establishes a home base, a safe space from which a teen can let down their guard. The shield protects them from the darker realities of the world, financial pressures, risks, threats, all the COVID realities around us right now. Inside the shield, the teen can find their feelings, their rest, and find their playfulness so long as they're shielded by us from the emotional impact of the reality of their situation. A shielding relationship inspires a teen to a sense of trust, loyalty, and belonging. Couldn't quite help it. It's one of my favorite, my mother duck slide. I love being the mother duck to all my babies, even if my babies are sort of 16 and 18 these days. Teens who are connected to us orient around the adults in their lives. And do you know what I find so surprising? That teenagers can be like this. They can feel that little and that vulnerable and that small when we've got the lead with them, a caring lead. When I was a mum to a toddler, I did not have the lead with her back then. She was an alpha child. She was huge energy. I constantly felt like she was this enormous King Kong type figure and I was getting crushed beneath her feet. And she was literally just little. And I could never conceive back then of having a big grown up like my young man. My son is well taller than me and my daughter is full grown up. And she feels to me like she's tucked under my wing. This is the feeling and the energy of a shield and of a close connection. They start to orient around you, so it doesn't matter their size or their age. So this is all well and good, and you say, oh, that's great, Adrienne, but I don't have that relationship with my teen and it's impossible to get it. I would like to spend a little bit of time looking at what gets in the way of the parent-teen connection. Competing attachments. So those of you familiar with the paradigm will know all about this. There are two ways for a teen to connect or orient themselves, and this is very well articulated in Gordon's book, Hold On to Your Kids. There are two ways a teen can orient to the adults in their lives. Is the first manner. An adult-oriented child is given an unconditional safe invitation by us, the parents. They feel very safe in that context, so they look to us for advice, guidance, and support. It's very easy to parent an adult-oriented child. They lean on us, they come to us. Unfortunately, we have competition. Only it were so easy. The other way of connecting is in a peer-oriented mode. And so often, even those of us who have adult-oriented children find something turns their head and they start looking towards the peers for their sense of welcome, their sense of safety, and then for their advice and their guidance. The problem with peer orientation, one of the many problems, is that one day you're in and the next day you're out. It is not an unconditional welcome. So it triggers enormous anxiety, fretfulness, pursuit, neediness. You know, teens get that real needy energy. I don't want to give you my phone because they're connected in here to their peers. What if they don't measure up? What if they don't have the right Instagram look for the day? What if they don't have the right teen phrases to say? What if they are not up with what's going on? So it's this really intense, needy energy. That is a peer-oriented child. And as parents in a digital age, oh my goodness, we are up against a lot here. We have to fight for our lead back again, over and over again. Competing attachments can threaten our connection to our teen. So let's take a look at the 3 feelings that are needed for a teen to find and restore their resilience. First of all, they need to feel safe. Then they need to feel sad enough, and then they need to feel strong enough. We're going to start with feeling. We've just done feeling safe. That was a reminder. Now we're doing feeling sad. So, feeling sad. Who wants to see their child feeling sad? How awful. Let's just stop it if we possibly can. Feeling sad is a vital part of emotional health. When our teens are up against that which they cannot change, they need to be allowed to sob out the frustrations, the futilities of their lives. You see, tears take us on a journey. Like we're at the top of a cliff and we're like, I don't want to go over, I don't want to go over. And then we let it happen and it's the letdown. We let it come. And then we fall into the abyss at the bottom of the pit. And we roll around in that abyss, and it is a miserable and horrible and a painful place to be. But then this really surprising thing happens. At some point, we've spent all our emotion for now anyway. It's going to come back again later, but we just go on the journey again. At some point, we spend our emotion, and there's this bounce back that happens. It is this... you'll have known it if you felt it. You just suddenly are on this kind of high. I don't know if you've just really sobbed and sobbed and sobbed about something that's too hard. And suddenly the world looks brighter. It literally seems to come into color when it was grey before. It comes into 3D when it was 2D before. It's an amazing feeling. This is where our healing lies. The other side of the letdown. Unfortunately, our culture, our Western culture, is very bad at letting ourselves fall into that pit, and we fight to claw our way back to the top of the cliff instead of collapsing into the letdown. We worry that if we let go or give up, we might never bounce back. The irony is it actually robs us of our chance to bounce back. I believe as a Western society, we have a fear of tears. Crying might seem like we're giving up or giving in. Crying is often associated with helplessness and breaking down. Crying is certainly something an adult or a teenager does. It's for children. Crying is wrongly associated with depression and despair. In societies where toughness is valued, tears are indicative of weakness and fragility. It may not be safe to cry in some contexts, as tears are often shamed and bullies assert dominance by exploiting perceived weakness. Those are the times we encourage our kids to hold on to their tears until they come home. Those who are defended against their own tears are far more likely to attack others for crying. It's okay to save our tears up from home, but there must be a safe place to cry. Back to that connect slide. It's only when tears stop that our teens are in trouble. They can come home and collapse into our arms. They're going to be okay. Buddha Neufeld says, in avoiding tears, we visit our own neuroses on our children. We are the ones afraid of the letdown. Don't pass that on to them. Because in the wake of tears is a powerful thing called the adaptive process. And those of you who know the paradigm will be familiar with this. I'm just glancing over this, but I want you to know this is a very big construct and there's a lot underneath this. So just to give you a little bit of understanding, resilience comes in the wake of tears. It brings recovery from loss and trauma. Rest both situationally and systemically. It gives us the release of unexpressed emotional energy and some relief from the behavior driven by the primal separation emotions. When we find our tears, we find that we're able to learn from mistakes and failure. A defender teen won't learn. It'll just wound them even further and harden them up even more. A soft teen is able to benefit from correction and consequences. And it enables the process of letting go, especially of alarm, frustration, and neurotic pursuit. A teen with a soft heart is able to transcend handicaps and disabilities. And this is the bit we like as parents. They're able to accept limitations and restrictions because, let's face it, teens' decision-making powers aren't always to be admired. Teens begin to accept not getting their way when their heart is soft, generally softened by tears. Such is the transformative process triggered through tears. I say to some of my clients with highly defended teens, when the tears come out, break out the champagne glasses. It is such a moment for celebration. It means they've softened their heart enough to tell you just how hard it feels for them. Don't try and stop those tears. Don't quench them. Don't walk away from them. Don't be embarrassed or ashamed of them. Welcome them. Welcome the tears and welcome the big emotions underneath the defense. Just a reminder, the 3 key feelings we've done: feeling safe, we've done feeling sad, and now we're moving to feeling strong. Feeling strong. It's far more likely that your teen is going to be able to feel strong if they first of all felt safe enough to find their tears and their sadness. And in the bounce back in the wake of that adaptive process, they're going to be much more likely to feel strong. So how do we help them feel strong? We need to help them find the strength within them to face the things that frighten them, upset them, or the things that just aren't working in their life. We want to help our teens learn to face the little clouds of life. We don't always make all the hard things go away by solving all their problems. For example, we help them cope with not always getting the fancy label shoes or clothing. We don't always rescue them the night before the assignment is due. You needn't always feel obliged to hand over your new phone to them because they broke theirs. And we need to learn to help them cope with the sadness of not seeing their friends while they're in lockdown, rather than enabling them to go out whenever they please. There's a lot of futilities we need to help them face right now. What you need to do as a parent is convey to them a sense of confidence in their ability to handle tough things. It's okay, you can get through this, we say. No matter how overwhelming the situation, how overwhelming the situation seems right now, you can get through this. They find their strength in the reflection that we give them of themselves. I see you as someone who can handle this, do this. You see, that overprotective helicopter type parenting can backfire. When we're questioning them, are you sure you're going to be all right? What do you want? What do you need? They start to doubt themselves. When we let them see the anxiety on our face and the concern over whether they'll handle it, they see that reflected and they go, well, maybe I can't handle this. Maybe it's too hard. Trust them to weather the little clouds, but help them out in a storm. We don't leave them on their own to weather out and manage the really big crises that they can get into. Big, scary things they get tangled up in, such as drug use, car accidents, police involvement. These things are far more than they're yet able to face or cope with on their own. And the parents in my practice have their teens facing a lot of these difficult situations. So yes, if your teen comes to you with a broken cell phone screen, you can encourage them to get a job and save up to pay back the cost of a new screen. Let them weather the little clouds. But if they have just been busted by the police at a party with drugs and they need to go to court, don't send them there on their own. Don't expect them to handle that without your support. It actually grows them stronger, not weaker, when we do this for them in situations that are beyond their ability to manage. Come alongside them in the storms and the mess they get mixed up in and help them through it. I'd like to add here, and this picture alludes to it, cyberbullying is massive. What happens, and I've got here a girl, because what happens to our girls online can be so distressing, so emotionally overwhelming, and actually they need our help through these situations. That is enormously overwhelming, the kind of mass bullying and nasty remarks that can go on, that culture. Invite their dependence on you. Say, we are going to get you out of this somehow. Give them a reason to look up to you and lean on you. So how do we soften them up? First, find their feelings, feeling safe, feeling sad, and feeling strong. I'm just going to find that summary slide. Can't see it. We just need to trust in nature's ability to heal us. Emotions are there for a reason. We need to feel our emotions to become fully human and humane. We need to feel our emotions to be capable of emotional and psychological intimacy. We need to feel our emotions to be able to feel fulfilled in loving relationships. And we need to feel our emotions to unlock our potential for resilience and recovery. So that covers emotions. We're now going to go into rest. We found their feelings, now we can help find their rest. By allowing your teen space and room to express their feelings, the body can now go into a place of deep rest. Rest, Gordon Neufeld says, is nature's cocoon for deep transformation. All true growth actually emanates from a place of rest, physically as well as mentally and emotionally. We become dysfunctional without physical rest. In rest, the limbic system goes into regeneration mode. Our digestion starts moving, our heart rate comes down, our breathing drops down. And I don't know if you found, but dreams. A lot of people have been talking about the dreams they've been having in lockdown, the colourful, polytechnic, multicolour dreams they've been having. Dreams give us insight into our waking reality. Sometimes we wake in the night with ideas that are amazing. I remember once I composed an amazing piano sonata in my sleep when I was a music student. And I was just like, that's so amazing. I'll just remember it when I woke up. And when I woke up, it had disappeared on me. Should have written it down at the time. Sometimes our mornings we can do our best work, but rest is not all about getting enough sleep. We can also become dysfunctional without getting enough emotional rest. If your teen is really restless and jittery, and I can tell you as a high school teacher, there's barely a teen sometimes who's not jittering something in their body the entire period. Restlessness is a sign that no true psychological rest is happening. We need our teens to be emotionally at rest. Well, rest from what, do you say? Rest from the work of holding in our emotions. It makes us uptight. Rest from the work of pursuing contact and closeness, chasing after friends to feel like they belong. Work from even chasing after us to get a sense of approval or acceptance. One thing we can do to help our teens get rest is to take that work of pursuit onto ourselves and release them from it. So instead of expecting your teen to come to you with their problems, why don't you go to them? I suggest for a lot of my clients building in a daily connect time into the day. Now, this is not to take away from those many, many moments of connection in the day where you try and find their eyes and a smile and a nod, lots and lots of times in the day. But put aside maybe 20 minutes where you actually are all about them. Go to them, don't wait for them to come to you. Listen to their stories of the day. Get interested in their music, their friends, their hobbies. Ask open-ended questions, so not yes-no questions such as, so you like this band then, do you? Yep. Or questions that have built-in opinions of your own, like, so why do you like listening to artists who are sexist, racist, and who use foul language? Instead, ask open-ended questions like, what is it about this music that you like? How did you come to start listening to this band's music in the first place? Try and listen without judgment. I know it's hard not to. Some of the things that they're interested in are certainly not what we are. We want to, in this daily connect time, collect their eyes and a smile and a nod while they're talking. Make this connect time a shame-free zone. No lecturing, no scolding. It doesn't mean you can't do that, but save it for later. Save it for a time in the day where their defenses might be up and intact. Don't trigger the defenses in your daily connect time. And make no topic taboo. Give them a sense they can talk about anything with you and that nothing is too much to handle. Welcome those big emotions if they turn up in daily connect time. This will help them find their rest psychologically, and that's what they need. Finding their play. True play is rest from work and from having to achieve. There are no outcomes, just pleasure and fun. True play is the leading edge of psychological development. True play is healing and therapeutic in nature, and playfulness is key to processing big emotions. You might not know that play is actually a form of rest, but with full system activation. So the brain goes into the same state when you're in play that you are in when you're asleep, but you're awake. So you're getting this amazing regenerative power and energy while you're in play. Playfulness is lacking in the defended, armoured up teen. Their play and laughter often has a nasty edge to it. Play doesn't need to be forced, it simply emerges when the conditions are right and when the teen and your household have had enough rest. So what would a playful teen look like in a pandemic? Well, I would like to say that teens have in fact been the leaders of us all in these dark times with their playful memes and quotes. Our family invented a bit of a lockdown ritual after dinner each night, where we all projected our cell phones onto the big screen TV with the best memes of the day from our phones, and we all had a great laugh. A recent newspaper article said, how could anyone possibly write jokes at a time like this? They went on to say, comedy, as frivolous and inessential as it may seem, is humanity's free coping mechanism, a medium that both distracts us from the horrors of the world while allowing us to get our best and worst thoughts out of our heads and off our chests. I am so thankful for the comics among us during the lockdown. It got me through some of the very emotionally dark times of the last few months. I would like to treat you to some of these fabulous memes that you probably have seen. Joys of lockdown. Oh, now everyone wants to know what introverts do for fun. Or Bridget Delaney says, in an unsettling reversal of my teenage years, I am now yelling at my parents for going out. People during quarantine, I don't know if this happened in Canada, but in New Zealand, the parks were full, the bike lanes were full, so full that my husband and I started riding on the road, which was completely empty because the bike lanes were so full. Hilarious. People who must never normally get out were all out and about. Why aren't there handles on doors anymore? Wesley, it's time I tell you about the year 2020. And one of my favourites, how I expected my apocalypse outfit to look. How I actually look during lockdown. So aren't they fabulous, those people who can make us laugh in dark times? Coming back to our initial question, how do I raise a resilient teen? Do I toughen them up or do I soften them up? Well, I hope that you now agree with me that the best thing to do is to soften them up. Paradoxical as it may seem, countercultural as it may be. Help them to find their feelings, find their rest, and find their play. Playfulness emerges out of all true rest, and when they feel deeply enough and rest deeply enough, they will find their natural playfulness and learn to thrive in the face of adversity.